Alright, time for another DraftPhysics.com video presentation. Hey, I'm happy about it. Frankly, alright, so eventually I'll get to this bit of Professor Lewin. This is, I don't know if this is the only place he derives the kinetic energy formula, but at least it's one instance, so we'll go through some of it and try to find the logic in it, okay, where it's logical, okay, to create this VMV thing. Multiply the velocity twice for what I would argue is no good reason, okay, no logical justification. But first, Stephen Bro has done something, just another example of, wow, is he this stupid? And the answer is yes. Yeah. So it's back here somewhere. It should be back here somewhere. I missed it. Okay, I'll pause and find it. Alright, should be back. Alright, so, he hasn't posted anything. He's promised 3-4 weeks ago that he had this proof that momentum isn't conserved, that kinetic energy is real. He, did some great experiment. The results are perfectly confirming his theory, blah, 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 blah. Nothing. Absolutely no evidence of any of that ever happening. But anyway, so this is his latest piece of crap, which is just such a piece of crap. So I just thought, oh, you have to talk about it because it's such a piece of crap. It just illustrates, people are just crazy. I mean, they're not just stupid. They don't do logic well. I just thought the hey dumbass. So somebody posted a video under the sock account name of hey dumbass. And he thinks this is the kind of people the internet needs. These are the people that really know the truth. The hey dumbassers. Yeah. Response to the silly one from Perspective Fact, which is a reasonable screen name, obviously, is worth reposting before Gary deletes it. I deleted it right after I read it in my video, right? So this is well after that fact. He posted this. Well after the fact that I read it and deleted it right in front of everybody. So, yeah. And blocked the account of hey dumbass because the rest of his comments were just absolute shit. I mean, so why don't you just post all of the hey dumbass comments? Why don't you just post, the fact is they all can post here, right? So Stephen's comment section is open to all these great counter arguments against me. Are there any great counter arguments? Have they answered any of my questions here? Have they done anything to dent or diminish in any way my argument? No. And so here they have this free opportunity to do it. They don't do it. Oh, anyway, funny. They could link to all the big evidence they have? No. They link to videos where some bowling guy says, nah, 8-pound balls don't work. Hardly evidence, I'd say. Yeah. All right, anyway, it's worth reposting before Gary deletes it, as he does with hundreds of great comments. So just another one of his bizarre, just absolutely bizarre accusations for which he'll never justify it. These are not great comments. This is an idiot who pinned a comment that says, you are absolute legend. Okay, the video is basically, it is such a piece of steaming shit. Only an 11-year-old could win an award for this video for just being an 11-year-old. Just being too stupid. Porn images. Women literally doing this. That's a science video. Just too fucking stupid. All of it inaudible and invisible. As science. With no details at all about the experiment. So that's legend. And this is by Wicked Energy, right? So who knows what this guy really is. I really appreciate this video. Why? It provided completely contradictory evidence. So it's basically he proved yin and then he proved yang. Why is that? Wow, I really love it when people prove absolutely nothing. They prove it's black and it's white. Those are the best videos in the world. Anyway, I tried to explain to Gary can just do the experiment. No, the whole argument is to have it done well, and Gary has already posted made live videos soliciting. He's sent emails to professionals offering them whatever price they sit there and willing to sit there and push it. Go ahead, push me and see how far I'll go. See how high I'll go for you to do the experiment well. Almost open-ended, but not quite. To have somebody do it who has a machine shop and has the proper space and has the ability to do it without it being filthy, just filthy in mind and body, as Bro is. Bruffy, the wonder clown. Anyway, so to say I refuse to do it in a manner that's not going to convince anybody. If I do it in the Brosian fashion, the Bruffian fashion, do you think you people will accept the results of the experiment? So if I produce a video of equal quality to the Bruffian pile of shit, am I going to get any of you people saying, oh yeah, you proved it? No, you're going to cop out and say, what a pile of shit that experiment was. How can you sit there and propose that as absolute proof? Anyway, he pinned that. That pile of shit. So anyway, let's just read the perspective philosophy. Just a generic comment. Okay, instead of saying physics arguments should be judged on their merit, so I've made a physics argument on places like Quora. I've gone to all the physics forums and I've asked simple questions and I've gotten blocked. Okay, now Quora didn't block me. Now they did force me to dox myself, which I found pretty offensive. I wasn't allowed to have a screen name. Okay, so that limited my ability to post. But I've posted these simple questions. Have I gotten any kind of rational answer related to it? So all these kinetic energy questions, all the related questions, could Stephen Bro go through those related questions and find any questions that got rational answers? Complete rational answers. People ask things like, well, how much does 1,000 pounds weigh after it drops 500 feet? And the morons tell him, well, 500 pounds. After it drops, it just sits there and then it weighs 500 pounds. Obviously the person's asking, how much does it weigh at impact? Even Professor Lewin will concede that if he jumps off the table, he weighs, over 300 pounds, a meter. Even he'll concede he weighs a different amount. Okay, when he lands for 2 milliseconds, he approximates 0.2 of a second. So for 0.2 of a second, he weighs 350 pounds. So he's conceding the argument. Do any of the physicists concede the argument? No. Do they stay on the subject? No. So, this question hasn't been answered in any way. It gets right to the point. It gets right to the point of your experiment. If I crash an object of 10 masses and 5 velocity into a spring and lock the spring at the greatest compression, then replace the object with a 5 mass object and release the lock, will the object leave with twice the velocity and twice the kinetic energy? Free energy, by the way. Kinetic free energy, because it has to be free then. So it gets right to the subject. Is there any answers? No. Will there be any answers? And if there is an answer, will it be in any way related to the subject, or will it just be another evasion? So this is a real thing that's happening. I didn't think Stephen Bro was this far up regular physics' ass, so clearly he wasn't going to find, he wasn't going to do my experiments legitimately. He was just wasting time, I guess. I don't know what his motivation was, because clearly there can't be anything wrong with the conventional theory. And you can't prove it without doing what? An experiment. No, you can prove it because it doesn't have any evidence. But anyway. Go back to Stephen's pile of shit. Finish reading the pile of shit again. All right. Merritt. Some people say no one who is not credentialed physicist should dispute the claims of conventional physics. No one can get into the conversation. That's the point. They have locked the conversation. They won't allow you to critique their physics. They will critique other imbeciles in the universe, but you can never identify them as an imbecile and critique them. They will not accept criticism. They will not accept being second-guessed or being backseat-driven or hearing any of the critiques or the criticisms. That's why they're able to keep this steamship of nonsense rolling, is because they've shut up anyone who objects and says, wait a minute, that sounds completely made up and silly. Anyway, which would lead to a situation similar to if the only ones that made arguments about the claims of religion were the priests. Yes, so it's exactly the same inquisitional kind of thing in the sense that we're gonna silence any dissent, and we'll punish it also and deter it. So even if you were a physicist and you thought about taking them on, they've given you plenty of reason to understand how you're going to get blackballed and you're going to be, censured. You're going to be punished. They even did it to Einstein. They punished Einstein, and made him an outsider. Places didn't even publish his papers, because Einstein wasn't singing the right song. So it's a real subject, and so a thoughtful question, a thoughtful description of the reality, measured, not too outrageous. Stephen Bro calls it silly. Okay. It's worth reposting. Okay, and so then you repost the dumbass reply. So somebody who calls himself, hey, dumbass, not at all provocative, not at all you're already saying fuck you to somebody. All right, so it's not even an effort to be reasonable. It's an overt effort to be insulting. Okay, and this is what Stephen thinks is smart. All right. Nobody that I'm aware of says physics arguments should only be made by credentialed physicists. So we've already seen how, I posted it on my website, the whole frickin' chain of crap from AB Science, where all he did was spend paragraph after paragraph evading my questions. Simple questions. I made a measured critique of his video, just kind of stating I was a bit disappointed that, you had Ken Wheeler on the hook and you didn't reel him in. Because you were too busy doing your theoretical mush about electron moments and all this kind of, magnetic moments and all your other theoretical crap, instead of you getting right to the subject, which is it's an optical illusion. And then I posed my questions to him in terms of defending some of that theoretical crap. And what did he do? He evaded answering simple questions. Questions that go right to all the effort you've gone to do your silly experiments. All the effort you've gone to shit on your own shit. Smear shit on your shit. Anyway, he spends more time worried about editing, adding music and jump cutting than he spends on the actual experiment. And he says that's a straw man. So he says it's a straw man to argue that conventional physics is a closed arena, that it's really difficult to get in the argument. They will close you out. Even people like that Sabine Hassenpfeffer person who's supposed to be some sort of dissident in the crowd, she sings songs about how I don't want to hear about your theories, your unification things and stuff. I don't want to hear that our physics is broken. Anyway, that's a straw man. It's obviously not a straw man. It's a pretty valid point to raise. What they do say is that many who criticize physics do not understand the claims being made. Yes, lots of flat earthers don't know any physics at all. Okay, so yeah, that's true. But it isn't true of all critiques against theory. Okay, so, if somebody says, well, multiverse is just made up. There's absolutely zero evidence. Dark matter is just made up. There's absolutely zero real, direct evidence of any such thing causing any such effect. None. But do physicists say that? No. Or they reject the evidence supporting those claims, or both. So it's only two choices here, right? So all the claims are fallacious. Regular physics is well accounted for. The evidence is really great. So even though the fact is there is no evidence, as in the kinetic energy formula, there's no evidence he can show me demonstrating why it should be believed. And the only evidence he'll show me is a mathematical derivation. He won't show me any physical experiment where kinetic energy works. He won't show me how, if I was in a spaceship and I was navigating, how knowledge that it takes 2,000 joules to shoot a dime 1,000 miles an hour, it only takes 2 joules of energy to shoot 2 kilograms, and 1 mile an hour. that knowledge will ensure the successful landing on the moon. No, it won't. Yeah, it'll ensure exactly the opposite. So anyway, to say that this comment is in some way, in any way intelligent as a response to the critique that physics is a closed arena, that physicists do not accept critique, that they do not accept having to defend their physics against argument, and that I have proven through many, many interactions, soliciting them with $2,000 offers, $2,000 offers, merely to engage 15 minutes of argument. 15 stinking little minutes. And they won't do it. And yet you think this is the side you should be on. You should close that door even tighter. You should defend those who wish to close the door even tighter. Man, you're so fucking stupid. Okay. So let's just remember. Go back to the Quora question again. I mean, the other ones are simple too. They're all there, sitting there unanswered by physics. Just a fact. Where the hell did it go? This one is who invented. So, yeah, they don't go to that truth either. All right, can you prove? That's the anonymous. How do you do it? All right, that looks like it again. So just a simple question, right? Okay, so you solve the whole paradoxical thing by understanding, okay, so they argue that there has to be, Newton's third law says whatever goes this way has to go that way, essentially. All right, so you can't have unequal amounts of energy pushing things. So if I do push the 10 mass object going 5 into a spring and compress it, it's not supposed to be able to create more energy out. I can't put anything on the spring that allows the spring to have more energy. And the irony is that the spring itself will have more energy. So if I just take the object off and let the spring shoot, it's going to end up moving at a very high velocity. Okay, it's small mass. And you'll be violating the same silly rules. The same concept of conservation will be destroyed. All right. Now, I'll take a pause, then we'll go on to the mathematical derivative. All right, should be back. All right, so this is what it looks like when he's finished. You see the 1/2 mv squared is in there. I guess I could highlight it, actually. I think I remember how to do that. I press this and this. No, I just press this. No. Oh, that's right. It doesn't show up on this. So, no point. Okay. No, that's right. It's this and this. Yeah, okay. This and this. Oh, yeah, there we go. All right. So, it's 1/2 mv squared right there. So, somehow he went from this, the work formula, and then F equals ma, and then created this 1/2 mv squared. So, it's really 1/2 VMV. All right. But there really isn't, just as you don't see any details that could possibly justify that, there aren't any in the video, but we'll play it anyway, just to see how he just kind of doesn't really address the subject.
A one-dimensional case. The work that a force is doing, when that force is moving from point A to point B, one-dimensional, here's point A, and here is point B, and the force is along that direction, or either in this direction or in this direction, but it's completely one-dimensional. That work is the integral in going from A to B of that force dx, if I call that.
So that force dx, so that this is where they start to do their derivative thing. So he's just creating some fake x, which I don't really understand, frankly. So the whole point is you can't calculate a force without having an opposing force. So the real argument is the work is the fact that you have to push against something. So you have to push against its mass. Okay, that's the simple argument to make. The force has to push a mass of some kind to point B. If it's no mass, then it wouldn't weigh anything, and therefore the force doesn't do any work. It doesn't have to move slower, so to speak, by my theory. And by their theory, yes, there's nothing to consume the force. There's no what you would call resistance in the wire. So the same voltage ends up being at both ends of the wire if there's no resistance in the wire.
The x-axis. The unit of work you can see is Newton meters.
Yeah, I can't really see that, but okay. So again, I'm not too sure what exactly. It's supposed to be force equals distance over time. So the change in the distance over the change in the time. I imagine that's what this has something to do with.
So work is Newton meters, for which we call that a joule.
Right, so we know that Newton meters is exactly what you're talking about when you're creating momentum. So clearly you can convert momentum into joules. They just choose not to do it, just as he can convert his weight from 155 pounds or whatever it is, or 65, whatever, into 350 by jumping off his desk. So he already demonstrated that he could change his weight by jumping off his desk. And that, weight isn't mass. Weight is what force does to mass.
If there's more than one force in this direction, you have to add these forces in this direction vectorially, and then this is the work that the forces do together.
So again, this work doing together against what? It has to be against something. It has to be against the inertia, as they would say, of A. So it's still not saying anything that's, in my opinion, very coherent to the concept of force. If A is being pushed against you, then you can understand you have to overcome that force. If A, is just a material object, to move it in space, you would have to apply a certain force to get it to move from point A to point B, just as gravity has to.
Work is a scalar.
So that means nothing, It's not a scalar, it's a vector, because as soon as he starts doing any math with it, he's going to establish which direction is plus and which direction is minus. So the work isn't a scalar, and you can see it right in the diagram. It's clearly linear. He said it was linear when he introduced what he was doing. So it clearly has a specific direction. It doesn't have any direction. So that's just nonsense. So it doesn't mean anything. The word scalar means nothing. It just means I didn't predefine that the motion is either right and left. That's it. Doesn't mean anything else.
This can be larger than 0, it can be 0, or it can be...
So the idea of work being negative is kind of silly. So that would obviously imply that there was a stream and you dropped A into the stream and the stream moved it to B. So you didn't have to do any work. You were doing negative work. So obviously this is another way, I could just argue to rational people, right? Do you think there should be any concept of negative work? Do you think the word work should be associated with some idea that, no, you didn't do anything, some other force did it? Of course it shouldn't. There should be no equation that says I'm going to count the other force that did the work instead of mine. I'm going to say my force has something to do with his force, which it couldn't possibly. They're two different things. So, it's just right on its face is stupid. I can have work that's less than 0. Stupid.
Smaller than 0. If the force and the direction in which it moves in an opposite direction, then it is smaller than 0. If they're in the same direction, either this way or that way, then the work is larger than 0.
So again, what he just said there, did that make any sense? If it's going with you, then it's more than 0. If it's going against you, it's less than 0. No, that's it backwards, I would say. He could be called on that alone as being, what the hell did you just say?
F equals ma.
So they keep saying that, but it's supposed to be F equals the change in your momentum. That's what Newton really wrote. It's the change in your momentum. The force equals the change in your momentum, quite obviously, because momentum is force, and force is work. They're all the same thing, and this is all just bullshit, frankly. It isn't. Newton's equation wasn't F equals ma. Newton's equation was F equals the change in your momentum over the change in the amount of time that you're interested in the force. So if you want to know the total effect, then you don't bother with time, and you just measure the change in your momentum, and that'll tell you how much force acted on you. just as it does in gravity. Your mass tells you exactly how much force you're going to collect.
So therefore, I can also write for this m dv dt.
Okay, so I don't know what the dv dt thing, I thought the d sort of meant change in velocity over change in time, but it has something to do with derivative too. So apparently when they're going to derive equations, they put all these d's in front of something because that somehow means something. But frankly, so you can convert momentum. Logically, you could say, look, in a conditional circumstance where we know we're not changing the masses, you obviously, mass isn't the changing variable. So you can separate the mass from the velocity. So you could have m over the change in your velocity over the change in time. So now it's still consistent with Newton's original formula. So this derivative isn't frightening. It's when they're going to multiply the velocity twice, that's when it goes stupid.
And I can write down, for dx, I can write down v dt.
So dx, which was whatever this is, f dx. So now we have the dx back, and now we're saying velocity times change in time. So here time was divided into, and here we're going to say dx, which is a distance maybe? I don't know. I mean, whatever this little x component is. It might be a little tiny sliver of the distance between A and B, and you're going to measure somehow something. But again, so he's thrown velocity in. So now this is where we get another v, okay, to multiply times the other v. Is this ambiguous dx equals velocity times the change in time. Why would I... Velocity already has time in it. So let's understand, velocity is already per second. And now I'm going to multiply it by an amount of time that's per second. So yeah, sorry, it doesn't make any sense to me.
I substitute that in there. So the work going from A to B is the integral from A to B.
So we know the work to go to A to B is really just the final change in your momentum. That's what Newton would say. What's the final change in your momentum when you got to B? That'll tell you how much work you did, because it'll tell you how much force was applied.
Times the force, which is m dv dt.
All right, so now we've changed, so that's momentum again. So it's m and the velocity over change in time. So that's the one right here. All right, so far we're safe.
The x, which is v.
So now this, why are we multiplying it times something else? So Newton's formula is right here. That's kind of complete. And now all of a sudden we're going to add something to it. Why are we adding to Newton's formula? Who knows?
dt.
All right, so v dt. So there, now we have the two v's. So now the formula is fucked, because now it's going to multiply the velocity twice for no good reason that I can figure out.
And look what I can do. I can eliminate time.
So when I did that, when I argued to somebody the time component's really irrelevant because all you're really measuring is the momentum. And yes, if you're going to measure it in little tiny pieces, then time is important. But if all you want to know is the total, then time doesn't matter anymore. And all you really care about is over the distance, how much force was applied per meter, for example. So that's what this f is supposed to be. The work function is supposed to be force times distance. So this dx is supposed to be a distance. It's not supposed to be a time. It's supposed to be a distance. It's supposed to be force times the change in your distance. So dx is supposed to be the distance. That's what the work function says. So that's why I should have said that because I knew that. That's the shorthand trick he played right here. Is instead of doing the F equals ma thing, he didn't do the work equals Fd thing, force times distance. So dx is a distance, and you can see right there he's changed a distance into a velocity, and that's where the whole thing breaks down. This dx equals v dt should be a number of meters. This is the amount of force over a length of distance. Then you end up with your Newton meters and your joules, because now you have velocity and meters. So he has no meters in here. All he has is velocity twice.
And I can now go to a integral over velocity a to the velocity.
So now why is he doing this? right? So we wanted to know what the work was for get point A to point B, and now he's concerned about what the velocity is going from A to B. Now, velocity isn't what we're after. I mean, it's a way of deriving the answer, but you're not going to derive the answer by multiplying the velocity twice. And that's what he's doing right here. He's got the velocity in the equation twice.
Take B, and I get m times v
Gratuitous chick stuff.
times dv. That's a very easy integral.
Okay, so we're not going to see how he diverts the. So now he's got mv dv. Okay, because he took time out of it. Does it make any sense? The d should be meters here, so this should be distance. So it should be mass times velocity times distance, and that makes sense, right? You have a mass, you have its velocity, and then over a distance that velocity is happening, and that's going to tell you the total force. So clearly the second dv should really be meters. It should be in meters. It should be telling you how many meters you traveled, and the force was hitting you that whole time. That would have made sense to me. This doesn't make sense to me.
That is 1/2 mv squared.
Okay, so we got no idea how he sliced and diced this to get a half and meters velocity squared. So you can see the velocity squared, v times v. How does and there's the mass, but where'd the 1/2 come from? So the 1/2 somehow is a consequence of getting rid of the d. So to get rid of the d, which I don't even know what it meant, that ends up putting a half here. Because everything else is the same, right? mvv. So you have mvv, so the only thing missing, that's mv squared, and so the half means I took the d out. Who knows?
Which I have to evaluate between VA and VB.
So there is no VA and VB. I mean, the velocity you start with would presumably be 0, and then you're going to B. I mean, why would you bother doing that in little tiny pieces? Why wouldn't you just say, what's my total velocity after I've been affected by the force?
And that is 1/2 m VB squared minus 1/2 m VA squared.
So now he's reconverted it back into the original form, which was you're supposed to be subtracting two different moments. So here it's a total, and here I'm going to subtract the initial velocity from the final velocity, the final energy, because now it's the energy formula. So the final kinetic energy is a derivative, now a byproduct of the initial kinetic energy, whatever that would be, and then subtracting the final kinetic energy, whatever that would be. But it doesn't say anything about the distance, which is the part where the force is being applied. So I'm just saying, this isn't Newton's math. Newton never did this. Newton wouldn't do this. Newton believed in momentum, believed in the conservation of momentum. And again, this byproduct, this new form of energy, is completely at odds with momentum. It gets different answers 90% of the time. I mean, 99% of the time. I mean, only in one circumstance for every mass to velocity ratio will the two formulas get the same answer. And that's the only circumstance is when 1/2 is exactly double of the velocity. So whenever, it's like when you have 2 velocity and the square is 4, and 2 times 2 is 4, that kind of thing. But that's the only time it's going to work, is when the 2 times the velocity is the same as the velocity squared. So that's the only time this thing will get the same answer as momentum. And there's zero evidence, no physical evidence of this. It was created by Leibniz, Newton's worst enemy, the guy accused and essentially proven to have stolen Newton's calculus. I mean, and then it was resurrected by French aristocrats, the insanely rich, not real scientists, in other words, Bill Gatesian types, and that just promoted it, used their money to publish and create, seduce the scientists into their arena of propaganda, to join their club. Okay, it had privileges joining the club, and that's all. That's the reason why this has any veracity, is because of this horrible history. All right, so that's enough of that, and probably enough of a video. But I'll think about it for a moment and then decide. Yeah, I'm back. So I went back to the question just because I just thought of, I could convert this into, sorry, eraser. So many details. What the hell was that drawing? Anyway, it doesn't really matter. So I was thinking of converting, if you convert this question, this simple question into, another one of these rocket ship type things, and then you just say, what have you done to physics if you accept their, I should put a fin on there too. Alright, if you accept their bullshit. So we have some force, so you're moving a rocket through space and you want to turn it. So the idea would be is you just have this compressed spring in here, and you compress the spring, and then on one side of the spring you put a 2-mass object, and on the other side of the spring you only have a 1-mass object. I should draw that smaller, so that would be visually more obvious. Okay, and so you're going to release the 2 objects. Now the fact is they're going to have the same momentum, right? So they're both going to, this is going to leave at 1 velocity, and this one is going to leave at 2 velocities. Okay, so this one has 1 mass and it'll have 2 velocity. So it'll be moving at twice the speed away, and this one will be moving at half that speed, but it has twice the mass. Now the momentums are equal, same momentum, so if you total this up, 1 times 2, 2 times 1, same answer, blah blah blah. But if you do the square thing, you get 5 over here, and you only get 3 over here, or whatever. You got twice as much energy over here by the kinetic energy formula. So now I've sent twice as much energy into the universe over here, and 1/2 that amount of energy over here. And so the question would be, is how does that not violate Newton's third law? Because how can I have more energy going into the universe? And if you're going to argue that somehow the spring failed, that somehow it can't get this thing, you can't give it all its energy because somehow the spring can't make it move, it has to go somewhere. So what's the consequence to my thrust going to be? Is the answer that, well, because I sent more energy out this side, I definitely will go this way. Okay, my ship will turn this way, because there's definitely more energy left. Because if the energy doesn't leave, I can't argue that these 2 sides are equal, right? So whatever happened that the spring failed. Do you understand? If the spring failed to push this with the same energy that's over here, right? We know it didn't make free energy, right? We're saying, okay, free energy is silly. So we're saying it must have not worked here. The spring failed here. Okay, and I only got 0.6 of the energy I was supposed to get. Okay, is going this way. 0.6. 1.4 is their square root of 2 somehow is the universal answer to all problems. You have a cold, take some square root of 2. That'll cure you. Anyway, that comes out to the 1.41 thing, where they're saying that only 1.4 of the energy goes out. But obviously in this scenario, we have energy going out. So anyway, the point is if it got stuck inside here, if it made heat, or it made some kind of deformation, or the spring failed in some way, it's inside the rocket. It didn't get out of the rocket. So there's no way that energy could go this way in any way to balance the energy this way. So they really are saying, they really have to say that, no, the rocket will turn because there's more energy going out this side than this side. That's going to have to be their conclusion. And it's overtly isn't going to work, and you're not going to land on the moon with that kind of logic. That's not in the NASA computer. Doesn't have any of that crap in it. Okay, it doesn't have any of this extra energy. It's not acknowledging its existence. It doesn't exist. The NASA computer doesn't think that's true. The NASA computer knows this is true. This is equal momentum. Now, I won't get a rational counter-argument to this. And Stephen Bro says that's the way it should be. There shouldn't be any rational explanations. We're not entitled to a rational explanation. Okay. So bad. Alright, so I think that'll conclude the broadcast day and such. So, play my national anthem and just call it a video. So, till the next time and such, this has been a DraftPhysics.com video presentation and such.